My name is Clem Castellano, and I'm an educational specialist for Career and Transition Services. At this time, I'd like to mention if you require a Spanish interpreter, please click on the link in the chat. And I would also like to ask one of our Spanish interpreters if they could please share what I just shared with our guests.
Buenas noches a todos ustedes y bienvenidos a esta presentación. El nombre del señor es Clem Castellano y es especialista en educación. En este momento, él también quisiera anunciar que tenemos un link que se va a poner, un enlace en el chat para todas aquellas personas que quisieran escuchar esta presentación en español.
Thank you so much for doing that. Okay, so before we get started, I just want to review some of the reminders with you guys real quick. As you can see, this presentation is being recorded. If you're not using Google Chrome as your browser, we strongly suggest you do that. You'll be able to see things much better. It'll cooperate better if you use that. Audio and video is turned off for participants, and however, you can privately chat with moderators using the chat, and webinar recordings are going to be emailed to everyone later this week. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn over this presentation to our Career and Transition Coordinator, Janelle Ellis, and she's going to share an overview of what Career and Transition offers, it's easy for me to say, to our families. Ms. Ellis?
Bueno, primero queremos informarles algo acerca de la presentación de esta noche. Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, so the slide was off. Sorry. Okay, go ahead.
I'm sorry, can I have the link to the Spanish room, please? Thank you.
Okay, I think we seem to have lost the presentation there, but I'm going to go ahead and give a little introduction to everyone. Good evening. Thank you, Clem. I want to welcome you to the first evening of our Super Transition Week and extend my thanks to all of you in our audience tonight for taking time out of your evening to learn more about transition services. I also want to thank all the FCPS staff and our community colleagues who have put so much effort in bringing this week-long event together and who are committed to being here every evening this week. This Transition Services event originated 6 years ago to help families better understand and navigate the transition of their children from school to post-secondary life. Post-secondary means the time after a student leaves the school system and begins the next important phase of life. The post-secondary goals of our students may include many things, but the things that we most often think of are the student's future education and training goals, employment goals, career goals, and their independent living goals. Our job as educators is to prepare students for successful transition to adult life. We also recognize that this process should begin early. So we thought about how could we share information and resources that would be useful for parents of students of all ages and abilities. As always, at these types of workshops, there's a lot of information that's presented. I want you to remember that you have many opportunities and avenues to get this information. We have many events throughout each school year. Career and Transition Services also has many printed resources and staff to help you along the way. So please try not to feel overwhelmed as you attend the sessions. Tonight, you'll learn more about who can help you with questions and concerns about transition planning. Before we get started with the first session tonight, I'd like to give you an overview of the Super Transition Week and what we have in store for you tonight and the next few evenings. In a few moments, we will begin with a session that will focus on the importance of transition planning for students in middle school. The state of Virginia requires that formal transition planning begin at age 14 or grade 8. There's a reason to start early, and you will hear more about this, what to expect related to the IEP, and what you can do to help as parents. The second session this evening will give all of you the opportunity to learn more about career and transition programs and services in FCPS and ask questions directly of the staff delivering these services. We will refer to our program Career and Transition Services as CTS. You'll learn about CTS, work-based learning classes, our career assessment services, our career and technical education supports, our career readiness programs for students staying in school longer than age 18. You'll also hear about our employment and transition representatives. It is important for you to know that FCPS has at least one ETR in all our high schools. They are the transition experts, and they are a resource for your child and for you. Tomorrow evening, February 23rd, our first session will focus on the benefits of self-determination instruction for students as young as elementary age through high school. Our presenter will discuss the I'm Determined project sponsored by the Virginia Department of Education. We will discuss why students' active involvement in their own education is so important to success later in life. The second session tomorrow night will give you the opportunity to learn more about adult services and resources. Some students may do better with extra support when transitioning, maybe for a brief time. Others may need ongoing supports to become more independent and employed. Resources that meet the range of students' needs will be discussed tomorrow evening. The third evening on Wednesday, February 24th, includes a session on college and post-secondary options. I encourage you to attend this session if you have a child with an IEP who is considering college. This is a great, informative session that can make planning the transition to college a positive experience. This will be followed by the first of two parent panels. Our parent panels are often the highlight of our Super Transition event. We recognize that hearing from fellow parents is often the most helpful, especially when their own experience of having been there, done that, is shared. Our panel on February 24th consists of parents and students who have already transitioned from high school to competitive employment or post-secondary education. Join these parents and students to learn how they managed and planned the next steps after high school and navigated some of the situations that one can face when one has a disability. They will be there to share their experiences and answer your questions. The last evening in our series of events, Thursday, February 25th, will focus more on students who may need ongoing supports after exiting the school system. In our first session, our presenter from the ARC of Northern Virginia will discuss how to empower your child to maximize independence. Transition planning resources will be shared, as well as information on supported decision-making, which is another alternative to full guardianship of your adult child. This will be followed by our second parent-student panel. You will hear from parents who have been through the planning and have navigated the complicated world of adult services for their children who need supported employment, day programming, and potentially long-term funding for community support services. We hope that you find the sessions helpful. I encourage you to please complete the feedback evaluation forms after each evening session. The link to these forms will be provided in the chat. It should only take you 4 minutes. Without your feedback, it's hard for us to know whether what we are doing is useful, and we always want to improve. So I'm going to give a brief overview of Career and Transition Services. The mission of Career and Transition Services is to empower a diverse population of students with opportunities and resources necessary to succeed in a variety of post-secondary options. IDEA, or the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, is the law behind the delivery of special education services across the country. As of 2004, IDEA includes the requirement that school systems provide formal transition services for all students with an IEP once they reach transition age. The key transition areas that are considered throughout the student's secondary years are employment and training, education, and independent living. And with these key areas, we also have to consider the factors that are essential for success within these areas. Some things that many of us may take for granted, such as community mobility, transportation, financial independence, social competence, and community participation. Being career and college ready upon graduation is what transition planning should be all about, and everyone has a role. This is especially important for the students with disabilities, since research does show that there are lower numbers of adults with disabilities enrolling and finishing post-secondary programs, getting jobs, or who are employed in jobs that really reflect their capabilities. The student, the parent, the case manager, the teachers, and the transition specialists all have a part in transition planning. Every member of the IEP team has responsibilities toward helping a student successfully transition and reach their post-secondary goals. A very important component and common thread throughout all of our FCPS program and course options is work-based learning. Work-based learning is something that all FCPS students participate in one form or another. This can look like mentoring opportunities, informational interviews, career fairs, and internships, or what we call community work experiences. In CTS, we're fortunate to partner with over 400 community employers that offer community work experience throughout the school year for students enrolled in our transition course electives and our 18 to 22 programs. I'd like to take 3 minutes to share a video. It's just under 3 minutes of one of our community work sites where many of our STEP program students have received instruction for a number of years. Clem, would you rather me skip the video for now since we're right at 15 minutes, or go ahead and show that?
No, please go ahead.
Okay.
Thank you.
Sure. All righty.
STEP stands for Secondary Transition to Employment. So basically what we do is we get students who are interested in bridging that gap between high school and working in the community, and we put them in job sites where we give them a skill set that will hopefully transition them to permanent employment in the future.
Step Up is a partnership between school districts and other educational institutions with the U.S. Geological Survey. Fairfax Schools has about 400 different work partners, but this is the only one that is a federal STEM environment.
The USGS offers our students so many different kinds of opportunities. So we have students who are very into computers, we've got stuff for that, lots of scientific things, really gives the kids kind of a broad spectrum of the kinds of things that are available in a workplace, all in one spot. So the USGS is so valuable to us.
The students are involved in a variety of projects. Some look for and tag images on maps in ArcGIS. Others identify stages of plant and animal development in trail cam photos. And others digitize and preserve data. One student is scanning cards sent to us by the public during the mid-20th century that report instances of seismic activity that they experienced while in Hawaii.
I'm teaching them different jobs and then providing day-to-day support on anything they might need. If it's learning a new technical skill, working on social skills, really anything related to the job, I'm here to support our students.
Here at USGS, I listen to bird files and enter data into a spreadsheet. I also write stories for kids, and I also translate stories from English to Spanish. It's been really helpful because it helps me manage my time and my organization skills, and it helps me plan for the future.
Of the 45 students that have aged out of the program since its inception, about 64% have either been employed by USGS or by other employers, and this is tremendous. About 9 students have been picked up by USGS alone.
I'm a Tier 2 help desk specialist at U.S. Geological Survey on the 3rd floor. I was a volunteer at the Chantilly STEP program 3 years ago. Applied for a job via USA Jobs, and I was hired in June of 2018.
The students get to know our scientists, and the scientists value our students. They see our students as people who care about their work. We find that the students' attention to detail, their desire to really master what they're doing, they have a place to practice that and do meaningful work that benefits not only them, but it also benefits science.
And that's what we're going to try and do here. We're going to try and solve problems.
Okay, and the next 3 slides are just some resources for you as parents. I know that you'll be getting a copy of the presentation at some point after this. So there's just a number of website resources to help you and be involved in the transition planning of your son or daughter. And then I encourage you to visit our Career and Transition Services website. The link to the website is on this slide. There's lots of resources there that are useful to you, like a parent toolkit, more videos of work-based learning opportunities for students, and description of our CTS services and programs. So now I'd like to introduce you to one of our job coach supervisors, Maggie Contreras, who will provide an overview of the transition IEP process, followed by a discussion of why it's important to start planning early during the middle school years. Maggie, are you ready?
Yes, thank you, Ms. Ellis. Good evening. We're going to get started. Welcome to Transition Planning for Middle School Students. My name is Maggie Contreras, and I'm a job coach supervisor with Career and Transition Services. Thank you for joining this evening, and I hope that this presentation gives you a better understanding of transition and leaves you with some ideas for how to get started with transition planning for your middle school students. I'm just pausing for our interpreters tonight. So the purpose of this evening's presentation is to discuss the importance of the IEP for effective post-secondary planning during the secondary years. So that includes middle school. We want to make sure that we're preparing students for successful post-school outcomes based on an effective transition plan. So we're going to describe the transition planning process, and you'll learn how we craft that transition plan, and we'll share some ideas and strategies for middle school students to get started with transition planning. And to get your questions answered during the presentation, please feel free to raise your hand and a moderator will be able to address you in the private chat. We do have some CTS staff members behind the scenes available for that. And we will also hopefully have a few minutes at the end of the presentation for a Q&A. So before we get started with the presentation, I would like to bring your attention to our Transition Toolkit for Parents. This is a comprehensive resource. It was included in the links that Ms. Ellis showed on one of the previous slides, but it's a resource that it's designed specifically for parents and families to become more familiar with transition planning as well as transition-related practices, programs, and services here in FCPS. Usually, each middle school family should receive a copy of the toolkit during the 8th grade or age 14 IEP. And I see Ms. Denisar just went ahead and put that link in the chat. And we'll also put the Spanish link in there for you as well. And following the conclusion of the workshop, you will have an opportunity to request a hard copy. We're happy to send those out if any of you would like that as well. So transition planning focuses on an individual's dreams and plans for the future. Transition services are mandated by the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, or IDEA, of 2004. And the language from the law is included on this slide. Specifically, transition is defined in IDEA as coordinated, results-oriented, and taking into consideration the student's needs, preferences, and interests, and it's educationally holistic. So in other words, transition planning includes the instruction, the related services, the community and work experiences, and the life skills needed for each individual student for post-secondary success. So the bottom line is that transition is critical in helping our students prepare for life after graduation. Now, as Ms. Ellis mentioned, here in Virginia, we actually begin transition planning a little earlier than is required by federal law. So starting in grade 8 or age 14, whichever comes first, every IEP includes the transition plan. And the IEP becomes a transition IEP. And it must include measurable post-secondary goals based on age-appropriate transition assessments, services including course of study needed to help the student reach their post-secondary goals, and always keeping in consideration the student's interests, strengths, and preferences. And I also want to note that in FCPS, when individual circumstances dictate, transition planning, it can begin even earlier. So for example, if a student needs extensive supports to manage medical or behavioral concerns, transition planning may need to start earlier during the elementary years. Next, we're just going to watch a short video clip outlining the top 10 ways to change transition outcomes for students with disabilities. Just give me one moment and I will share that.
The top 10 ways to change the outcomes for students with disabilities. Number 10, know the data story. Don't ignore the statistics. Students with disabilities have lower graduation rates, post-secondary enrollment rates, and employment rates than their peers. Number 9, begin transition planning early. Virginia regulations mandate beginning no later than the year the student will turn 14 years old. Begin even earlier when appropriate. Number 8, make age-appropriate assessments the foundation of your transition IEP. Formal and informal transition assessments should be used to determine readiness and monitor progress. Number 7, maintain high expectations. Help students earn the highest possible diploma and make them college and career ready. Number 6, assume competitive employment. Spend more time focusing on how to support a person in competitive employment rather than debating if they can be competitively employed. Number 5, provide students with employment experiences while they are still in secondary schools. Be creative. Consider multiple possibilities: internships, summer jobs, youth-run businesses, entrepreneurship, service projects and volunteer work, part-time jobs, cooperative work experiences, apprenticeships, and job shadowing. Number 4, teach and model how to plan for transition. Use the PEAT process. Pinpoint goals, establish plans, take action, and evaluate process. Number 3, remember, our ultimate goal is to empower students with disabilities with the skills and knowledge they need to live, learn, work, and participate in the communities of their choice to the maximum extent desired. Regardless of the disability, we need to help all students become more self-determined and reach their individual goals. Number 2, evidence-based practices must guide our work. We cannot expect to continue using the same methods and getting different results. Research has to play an important part in transition planning. And the number 1 way to change the outcomes: never underestimate the influence your job performance has on the adult outcomes and quality of life for the students you teach. Your students need you to be the best you can be. Knowledge is power. Continue learning about ways to improve transition outcomes.
And that was brought to you by VCU's Center on Transition Innovation. And I think that really captured some important ways that we as families and educators can be involved and invested in this process for our students. And I do want to emphasize point number 9, which was to begin transition planning early. And since we're talking about support for our middle school students, it's really important to keep that in mind. So who is involved in transition planning? Team members include the family, principal designee, case manager, other school staff, which could include a related service provider, a school counselor, a clinician, and general education teacher whenever possible. But the most important participant is the student, because the plan is all about them. So our job is to help students answer these questions. Who am I? Where am I going? And how do I get there? And these questions become increasingly important as the student reaches transition age. And it is up to all team members to work together to help the student answer these questions. Now in middle school, when a student is just starting the transition planning process, they may not have any idea as to how to answer these questions, and that's okay. A student's transition plan is in the early stages at this point, and focusing on the who am I is really the first step. So getting to know yourself, your interests, your strengths, your preferences, etc. And playing an active role in the process, which we'll talk a lot about tonight, will help lay the groundwork for a successful transition. It's also important to note that transition planning is a collaborative effort. Every member of the IEP team has responsibilities towards helping a student successfully transition and meet their post-secondary goals. So everyone has a role, and we want you to keep that in mind. So listed here are some ways that IEP teams can help prepare their students for productive lives. So I'll give you a moment to read these. And when we're talking about a person-centered approach, we're not just talking about academics. When we're talking about transition planning, we're talking about a more holistic view of the student, so the whole student. So in addition to academics, we also want to discuss essential skills like handling money, taking medication, self-care, executive functioning, social and self-advocacy skills. So again, with transition planning, we want to look at the whole student, and we also want to keep it individualized. So we want to provide a brief overview of what the transition plan actually looks like, because we realize some of you may never have seen it before. So here are screenshots of IEP 303, which is known as the transition goals pages. So when you're in an IEP meeting, these pages are at the very beginning of the IEP, usually on page 2. And the plan begins with a discussion of the anticipated graduation year, followed by the diploma type. And then it moves into the discussion of transition assessment and post-secondary goals. Now we will explain transition assessment in a moment, but the transition assessment is information that helps to determine a student's interests, strengths, and career goal. So with all of this information right here. The post-secondary goals are located on the top right-hand page. And those are what the student wants to do after he or she graduates from the school system. And then the transition objectives, which are the lower half of the right-hand page here, are benchmarks. So what the student is going to do during the next year to help the student work towards their post-secondary goals and achieve their career goal. And I think it's important to note that we start with the transition plan because then the entire IEP revolves around these pages. And it's up to the team to make sure that the student is equipped to reach their post-secondary goals. So we're going to talk a little bit about transition assessment, which is a pivotal part of the transition planning process. If you recall from the previous slide, transition planning starts with purposeful, age-appropriate, relevant transition assessments. And so you may be asking yourself, what exactly is that? That's a question we often get. And transition assessment is any information that helps the team, including the student, when developing post-secondary goals. It helps identify areas of need that can be addressed in the IEP. And it helps with refining and improving the plan. So transition assessment it's ongoing. It's not just something that's done one time or in isolation. And it can be pulled from a variety of sources. So it can come from existing data. So for example, reevaluation information or standardized assessments such as SOLs, as well as new data. And it can be formal or informal. So it can be things like checklists or classroom assessments or interest inventories. And it's the foundation for effective planning and provides a holistic picture of the individual student. Now what you see here is the next section of the IEP transition plan, which is IEP 304, with the transition services page. So after the transition goals are discussed in IEP page 303, we move on to page 304 into a discussion of the transition services. Now the top portion of the page lists services that support students' progress towards achieving their career goal. Now I do want to mention that some of these services may not be applicable to middle school students, but it's important to be aware of what they are for planning purposes. Maybe it's not something the student can use in middle school, but should be explored or selected when the student gets to high school. And after this presentation, you will be able to learn more about these services in our CTS overview And you can also find definitions of all of these in the parent toolkit. So why is transition planning so important? Because it drives the entire IEP, every page in the IEP. So to sum up, assessments help determine the student's interests, preferences, strengths, and career goal. The post-secondary goals are what the student wants to do after he or she exits the school system, and the transition objectives are benchmarks. What is the student going to do this year to work towards their career goal? The IEP goals with supporting objectives should then focus on academic and functional skills the student needs in order to move from school to post-school outcomes. So 3 rules for effective transition planning that maximize options and opportunities include Rule 1, which is to be future-oriented. We ask students to think beyond middle and high school to what they'd like to be doing in their mid-20s, and then go through all the steps they would have to take to get there, identifying any barriers that might get in the way. And granted, this is difficult, especially for middle school students and even older students as well, because you really don't know what you don't know. This is another reason why we start early. Rule number 2, and view this as a process that teaches goal setting and self-determination. So we want to emphasize that transition planning is ongoing. It's not just this isolated event that we talk about once a year at the IEP meeting. And following the process on the previous slide of the downward row of arrows, every year the IEP team should review existing data and determine if new transition assessments are needed. And when transition planning begins, goals may seem vague or unclear. Students might begin with a career goal that states, I'm not sure of my career goal, but I know I want to work outdoors, or I want to do something where I can help people. And as the student gets older, the goals get more refined. And also when transition planning begins, sometimes goals might start by appearing unrealistic. But through thoughtful and coordinated planning over several years, our students can have viable and successful transition plans in place by the time they leave us. So one of the takeaways that we want you to leave with is that transition planning is a process. It's not an event. And we're always revising and fine-tuning the goals. So why is transition planning important for middle school students? Well, in addition to it being part of the law, research shows that earlier exposure to transition planning leads to improved post-school outcomes. Starting in middle school also gives students more time to explore and prepare for the future. Students with disabilities may need extra time to explore employment options and gain work experience. It also provides IEP teams additional time to identify student needs and match appropriate goals, classes, and transition services. And when we think about it, starting early makes sense in the context of working with individuals with disabilities. Early intervention is key. We start reading to our children the minute they're born or before as part of their development. We also start asking them what they want to do at a very early age. We already have hopes and dreams for the vast possibilities. Middle school is a time when students are building their social skills as well as their level of independence. And students at this age typically gain more responsibility and maybe their first employment-related experience. And that might just be chores or volunteering or taking care of pets or helping out with childcare. The younger we can start and the more uniform the process, the greater the impact is for students. Ultimately, early planning is what's best for students to ensure successful post-secondary outcomes. So listed here are some simple questions to help facilitate middle school involvement in the transition planning process. Students can be a part of their IEP process earlier than we would think, just by knowing they have an IEP and why, understanding how accommodations can help, understanding what a goal is, and finding ways to actively participate has been shown to lead to self-determination and post-school success. What you see here are the suggested middle school tasks, which are part of our overall transition timeline. You can also find this list in the transition toolkit. It starts with the middle school years and goes grade by grade through high school. These are just suggestions and are not meant to overwhelm you or your student with this process. You don't have to do every single one of these things. They're not required, and some of them your student may already be doing and not even realize it. So start small. Maybe choose one or two to focus on at a time. We're going to highlight a few of the important ones during the remainder of our time tonight. But students can choose among the activities listed in order to initiate successful transition planning for middle school students. It's really important that they're given opportunities to begin exploring and identifying their interests, their strengths, and their goals. Identifying interests is the first step towards choosing a career path. And they can do this through a variety of ways, such as exploring elective courses, clubs, or extracurricular activities, or exploring websites and tools such as Naviance Student. We're also going to share some tools and resources that can help facilitate some of these things. If a middle schooler with a disability even just focuses on these components of self-awareness and self-advocacy and getting to know yourself, understanding your strengths, your weaknesses, your preferences, they are laying the groundwork to a successful transition plan. Charting My Future is a simple activity. It's located in the parent toolkit if you want to access it. And this can help students determine the steps they must take to reach their goals. Students identify where they would like to be in terms of both career and personal goals by age 25. This can be reviewed each year to determine what needs to be accomplished to achieve identified goals. For example, Darnell wants to be a doctor. To reach this goal, Darnell will need to graduate from medical school. To get into medical school, he'll not only have to attend college, but do well enough to qualify as a medical school candidate. To do that, he'll need to earn a standard or advanced studies diploma with a concentration in the sciences. The team should work back to 8th grade, where Darnell should earn satisfactory grades in science and pass the SOL test. So a tool like this is really helpful in kind of demonstrating that backwards design process that students have to go through in order to effectively transition plan. Some of the work being done in the division to support student-led IEPs and student-focused transition planning begins with our partnership with I'm Determined. And we do have a separate presentation on I'm Determined, but I wanted to share a couple resources with you tonight. The I'm Determined project is a state-directed project funded by Virginia Department of Education. And it focuses on providing direct instruction, models, and opportunities to practice skills associated with self-determined behavior. Because again, research shows that if a student is involved in some of these areas, it builds their self-awareness, their self-determination, their self-advocacy. So what you see here are two tools from I'm Determined. The first one is called the one-pager, and it can be done at school or at home, and it will help the student get to know themselves. Once the student has completed this form, they can present it to the IEP team as a way to start the IEP meeting. Another way to use it could be presenting it to their teachers at the beginning of the year so that the teacher can get to know the student quickly. And information from this document can be added to the transition plan. The second resource is called the goal plan, which again can be done at home or at school. And students are asked to set their own goals. And this activity has students reflect on their strengths and weaknesses and create goals based on that self-reflection. Students are then asked to think about how they plan to meet their goals. This is the beginning stage of the goal planning process. So I'm just going to share a quick short video of a middle school student sharing his one-pager. So just give me one moment.
We use the one pager to create awareness, really. So it's kind of like a beginning for the kids, where we're just meeting with them and talking about what are strengths, what are needs, what are preferences, what does it mean to have a certain way that you learn.
Hello, my name is Jamal Thompson, and I am from the Northumberland Middle School, and I'm in the 7th grade. This is my one-pager. Things I'm good at is basketball, football, hunting, music, and playing with my brother. My strengths are basketball, football, hunting, and math. My preferences is visual. This means I learn best when I can see pictures. My needs are study guides, asking questions, getting time to think before having to answer questions.
And so as you can see, some of these tools are really helpful to use with some of our younger audiences, such as middle school students. And it's direct information that can be included in the transition plan. And I'm just bringing the presentation. Thank you. Okay. So attending the IEP and participating in the development sorry, we were on the wrong slide there for a moment. Attending the IEP and participating in the development of the transition plan are two of those middle school transition tasks that we're going to spend some time talking about. So what percentage of transition age students should participate in developing the transition plan and attending their IEP meetings? We say 100% of them. It's important that the student be involved in his or her transition plan and the entire IEP process. The law even emphasizes student involvement in the transition plan. As you can see here, this is a screenshot of IEP 303. There is a checkbox where the student acknowledges not only that they've participated in developing the plan, but that the entire plan focuses on their interests and preferences. So it needs to be documented on the plan. If the student does not attend, schools must ensure that the student's preferences and interests are considered when developing the IEP transition plan. But really, the student should be attending. And at a minimum, the transition plan should be based on the student's interests and preferences. Best practices are that we involve the student to the maximum extent possible. And again, this is new for middle school students, and sitting in an IEP meeting may be unfamiliar and intimidating, and that's completely normal. Maybe they just take the time to introduce the team members or share assessment results. If just being there is the first step that they're comfortable with, then that's fine too. And there are other methods of participation, which we're going to share with you. And again, research shows that students should be involved in their transition planning. They take more ownership, they become more determined with what they want to do, and they're able to monitor their own goals, and they're more invested in their education, and it helps build self-awareness and self-advocacy. When students prepare for their IEP meeting, they can use this tool to help them participate. This document is a simple guide, and it can be used to help students understand the importance of their participation in the IEP and provides an outline and checklist that can help them feel more comfortable with the process. And I see the link to this document was just put in the chat. Thank you so much. On page 2 of the same guide are suggestions for ways that students can participate before, during, and after the meeting. Some students may not be comfortable leading their IEP meetings or even having a voice during the meeting. And these are just some simple ways for them to start the participation process before, during, and after that meeting. So let's look at a video clip where you can see a student working with the teacher to prepare the transition plan, and then the active role the student takes during the meeting. Give me one moment.
All right, Sydney, we're going to start working on picking your pictures for your presentation today. Let's start with your first slide. I want Sydney to be as involved as possible in creating her PowerPoint for her presentation at her IEP. In the past, the students in our class have not been involved at all in the IEP process. So this was a way to bring Sydney in and to get her involved in the making of the presentation, and then also for her to be involved later in the actual presenting of her PowerPoint. Okay, now that we've talked a lot about Sydney's strengths, we're going to talk a little bit about the places that Sydney has challenges with. It's the best IEP meeting I have ever been a part of. This is my 8th year teaching. Just having a celebration of the student and having the student involved was the most wonderful. It's all about the student, and that's what it should be. All right, Sydney.
So every student can participate at some level. There are meaningful ways for them to contribute, be it through the use of gestures, by showing pictures depicting their strengths and goals, or by activating a switch to begin a slide presentation. It's usually as easy as adapting communication strategies that are already in place. And finally, I have one more example of a student stating his needs and wants during the meeting, but is doing so in a creative and comfortable way for him. Just give me one moment. And there are many ways for students to participate in their transition plan and their IEP, and should be based on the student's comfort level. And students can work with their parents or their teachers and their parents prior to the IEP meeting and practice how they're going to participate in order to make them feel more at ease. Parent input is very important throughout a student's transition years. And it is especially important for our middle school students because, again, these students are just starting out with developing their transition plans, getting to know themselves, and developing their self-awareness. So what you see here is our transition planning checklist for students and parents. And that can be completed at home by students with their family members to help identify their transition planning priorities. And this input is particularly helpful in generating ideas for those transition objectives, such as the independent living objectives on the transition goals pages, so that IEP page 303. And again, this is located in the toolkit, and we encourage you to consider utilizing it as an easy way to provide input to your child's transition plan. We want to take a moment to mention adult service agencies, since connecting with some of these agencies may be important for some students to successfully transition to adult life. Although most of these connections do happen in high school, it's never too early to begin learning about agencies and services available and long-term supports if needed. We do have presentations later this week with more information on transitioning to adult services if you are interested. We also want to highlight the academic and career plan, as that was mentioned. Completing those tasks was mentioned under the middle school transition tasks. The academic and career plan is a process for students to plan for the future by exploring college and career options. Students have opportunities to discover their personal strengths and interests, create goals to help them achieve success, plan for courses that meet high school graduation requirements, and prepare them for life after high school. Each student's plan is stored electronically in the Naviance student tool and can be accessed by students through their FCPS 24/7 Blackboard account. The ACP is updated regularly as each student's academic, personal, and career goals change. And what's really wonderful about the ACP is that much of the information can aid in the development of a student's transition plan. Finally, another important middle school task that we'll talk about is beginning a CTS career portfolio to collect information to help plan for your future. We want to take this quick opportunity to share an update regarding the educational and career planning portfolio. The career portfolio is initiated when a student reaches transition age, so again, age 14, and it is used for storing transition assessments and transition-related documents and information, and it's a way to track transition planning from year to year. And we are pleased to inform you that the career portfolios have moved online, and we're going to show you how to access your students' electronic career portfolio. What you need to do is navigate to fcps.edu/Naviance, and then log in, same login screen for SIS, Blackboard. Make sure when you get to the home page that you click on the student's name. Do not click on the Naviance. And then you're going to go up to the drop-down menu to About Me. Click on Student Stuff, and then click on Documents Shared with Me. and then you can click on the Career and Transition Services or View, and both actions will take you to the same place. And we do want to note that for the career portfolios, this is a new initiative. Previously, of course, we were using physical files and paper. So if you don't see too much information in there yet, definitely don't be alarmed. But case managers and teachers are getting used to using the tool. So hopefully you'll see more things there in the near future. Before we take any final questions, we just want to remind you again about our transition toolkit. And I know the link has been provided for you in the chat. If anyone would like a hard copy mailed to you, there is a Google form that we're just going to put in the chat. Please feel free to complete that, and we're happy to get that to you. And any final questions? I know there's been questions answered throughout the presentation. But if anyone has any final questions, I'd be happy to answer them. Okay, Kendra, we're just going to make you a presenter. If one of the moderators could please. Okay. Kendra, if you want to turn your mic on, you can go ahead and ask your question.
Yes, sorry if that's not working. I just had a question. So is this for all of high school? I know you talked about it being federally mandated. Does this go also for all 50 states if we were to perhaps move in high school? I guess that's my question. Our family is potentially going to be doing that, and I didn't know the difference on how it would transfer to a different state.
Sure, that is a great question. So in terms of the federal transition requirements under IDEA, the federal requirement is age 16. So some states may have it earlier, it just depends, but the federal requirement is 16. Good question.
Okay, and then, but this would be something they would recognize if we were to take to a different high school somewhere else. It would all be similar to what they would be doing in a different state, probably?
Yeah, transition planning, you know, the level of services and, you know, what's offered from state to state and school district to school district, it can vary because it kind of what the law says, it doesn't, there's not specific people that have to deliver the transition services, but they need to be delivered, if that makes sense. So
okay,
it may not look the same, but the services, they are required, yes.
They're supposed to be like a similar thing, probably.
Yeah.
For what's required. Okay, very good. Thank you.
Any other questions before we move on? Yes, thank you, Mr. Castellano. Virginia chooses to start transition a little earlier, which is great, because as we've been saying throughout, it's never too early. All right, well, if there are no further questions, I guess Mr. Castellano or Ms. Ellis can continue.
Okay, thank you, Maggie. Clem, did you have anything else you wanted to add, or do you want me to go ahead and go into the overview?
No, please feel free to move forward, move right ahead.
Okay.
I guess just in case we have any people who would require interpreters, maybe we just want to put the link, Trevor, maybe we want to put the link out again, and I don't know if Janelle, if you just want to share that we do have a room open if anyone requires that for people who maybe came in a little bit later.
Sure, I will do that. So we do have a separate room available for anyone who wants a Spanish-speaking interpreter to translate what we're saying in the presentation. And Trevor Christensen just put the link to that room in the chat, so you can leave this session and go to that, and you will hear the same thing, but we have a Spanish interpreter in that room for you. So the career, I'm going to just provide an overview, a brief overview of our different programs and services that we have in Career and Transition Services. And then we'll just open it up for questions so you can speak directly with the folks that are delivering those services and teaching in those programs. They're with us tonight. So the career, I'm going to start out with our academy support teachers. The career and technical education programs, referred to as CTE, not to be confused with CTS. I know we have a lot of acronyms. The CTE programs offer instruction in many career areas. Areas of instruction range from high-tech information systems to lower-tech cosmetology. So for example, the CTE academies will offer programs in culinary arts, engineering, health sciences, medicine, animal science, construction, auto technology, firefighting, and more. There are pharmacies, so there's a lot of different career areas. These academy classes are available to all students in FCPS. Another research-based predictor of post-secondary success is that students complete occupational courses while they're in high school. So the transition electives that I will discuss in a moment, as well as the career and technical education electives, are considered occupational courses. The curriculum for CTE programs does adhere to rigorous industry and academic standards, technology, and employment competencies to prepare students for higher education or to go directly into a career. And we are very fortunate in FCPS to have Academy support teachers. The Academy support teachers are assigned to each of the career and technical education academies. Academy support teachers are special educators who increase access to the course curriculum if needed for students with an IEP. Academy support teachers assist students with disabilities in many ways. Just a few of the ways are they provide instruction to those that are having difficulties with the content of the class. They provide individual test administration and other accommodations according to the IEP. They assist and prepare and administer instructional materials for review. They act as a go-between between the student and the course teacher often. They will implement behavior support plans. They'll support student with schedule changes if the class isn't a correct fit. They do assist with the transition process, so job and college applications and resumes. They'll assist the academy teachers with the course material whenever possible. And of course, they implement the IEP accommodations and modifications for students. They'll present the instructional material to students in a variety of forms, and they'll help take class notes and provide copies as necessary to students. Another offering within FCPS is assistive technology support. We have an assistive technology resource teacher who works with students who are nearing transition out of FCPS. So support can include technology accommodations and strategies for communication, can include workplace accommodations, and assistance with using universal design strategies in the classroom and in the workplace. So this support can be related maybe to organization and executive functioning, can relate to reading supports, computer access support, and also maybe visual strategies and other types of accommodations for students. But the goal of the assistive technology resource teacher is to help students be independent in the areas that they may have been dependent on others for. FCPS offers several types of formal career assessment for students. The hands-on evaluations that are done either at Mount Vernon or Woodson High Schools are very in-depth career assessments. Our certified vocational evaluators work with students, taking them through a series of hands-on work-related assessments. These hands-on assessments might be related to mechanics or different technologies, cosmetology, medical services, culinary, for example, and more. So we have quite a few different areas to assess. Because the assessments are hands-on, the students do have to travel to the assessment centers to complete them over 2 or more days at Mount Vernon and Woodson High School. Another formal career assessment option that we have is Career Snapshot. This is in a group setting. It's a group setting assessment of career interests and preferences in collaboration with the high school career centers. These are conducted with classes of 10th grade students. Results may be used to identify career options for more exploration and to learn how to use the materials and resources that are in the Career Center and to develop a career action plan. So the Career Snapshot takes place at the student school over 2 days. Students receive, at the end of it, they receive a portfolio of their interest, work-related characteristics, their work preferences and strengths, and career resources to use in transition planning that they can continue to visit. With the virtual environment that we've been in, we have been able to continue with 2 of the formal career assessment options that we have. The one is the Virtual Career Exploration Experience, which is the VCEE, and we do plan on continuing this. This is for 11th and 12th graders usually, and it's completed over 2 to 3 hours. And this assessment looks at the functional academic skills that apply to specific occupations of interest to the student. And then the career scope is also generally completed with juniors and seniors in high schools. And this one is a good assessment for students who really have unclear career goals as they're getting ready to exit. It generates a computer report, computer-generated report, and that can assist students in their decision-making while they're in school and after they graduate. And it does include considerations for further high school coursework and post-secondary education training and options in employment. So that is included in the report. All of these different formal career assessments end up generating a nice comprehensive report. So the Davis and Pulley Career Centers provide career and employment skill instruction to students with disabilities who may need more support than is available in the general education courses. Students participating in these center programs are 18 to 22 years of age. Instruction is offered at a wide variety of community businesses. Work competencies are taught and practiced in a variety of community settings and businesses. And while working with the employers in the community, the students gain valuable life experiences by working with adults in inclusive environments. Instruction in character education, social skills, and independent living are infused throughout the curriculum. Additionally, students do build functional literacy skills. They participate in community activities such as banking and travel training and take a major role in designing their own career development plans. Education for Employment in the Office, or EFEO as we call it. This is a 2 or 3 year course that provides instruction in Microsoft computer applications and other technology applications and office procedures. Following the in-depth classroom instruction, students do practice skills in community businesses with employers. EFEO is offered at 4 sites, Cedar Lane School, Falls Church High School, Hayfield Secondary School, and Westfield High School. And transportation is provided to students from their base high school to the EFEO school sites and work sites in the community. And the Employment and Transition Representatives, or ETRs, they are the main resource contact at each high school for transition planning and support. They can also answer questions and provide training for for middle school teams. Employers, what they do a lot of different things, but just to name a few of the things that they establish our employer partnerships for community work experiences in the community, and they coordinate with the employers and the teachers and the students and the parents to make it happen. ETRs work with adult service providers and ensure students and families are connected with these adult service providers before they graduate. ETRs also refer for FCPS transition services, and they'll develop transition plans for the students. They provide instruction in classes to support teachers in areas related to career and transition, such as self-determination, job seeking and keeping skills, to name a couple of things. They actively support students' involvement in the work-based learning activities, not only community work experience, but also mentoring opportunities, the NOVA Vision program that we do in conjunction with the community college, the CTE Academy orientations, and many post-secondary employment and training programs. ETRs are part of the IEP team for many students on their caseload, but they are also a resource for all students in their buildings with an IEP, so not just the ones on the caseload. They collaborate with school counselors, and they collaborate with the Career Center specialists quite a bit in the schools to help students plan for their future, and students with the process of applying to programs and colleges and navigating and understanding the disability support services that are available. Job coach services are designed to support students' success as independent workers. Job coaches assist students with special needs who have the potential for independent employment, but need specialized, short-term, on-the-job support and training to succeed. Students work with job coaches to develop and integrate specific skills at the job site, including such things as time management, organizational and social skills. We have, in CTS, we have 2 FCPS job coach supervisors, and they train and they support approximately 20 to 25 hourly paid job coaches. Job coach support is requested through the ETR or through the special education teachers at the schools and is available. We have job coaches available for students for paid employment as well as for non-paid community work experiences through our CTS programs and our classes. STEP stands for Secondary Transition to Employment Program. And this is similar in the model of Davis and Pulley Career Centers, and it's also a program for students that are 18 to 22 years old. They receive instruction in career education based on business-based competencies. Career skills and work behaviors are taught and practiced, again, in a variety of community employers and businesses, such as retail, hospitality, medical services, and IT. The video showed earlier tonight was one of the examples, the USGS site for STEP. While working in businesses in the community, the students get valuable life experiences by working with adults, inclusive environments, and again, the instruction in career education, character education, social skills, and independent living are infused throughout. Currently STEP has 4 locations, and these locations are Chantilly High School and then the feeder high schools that students can attend Chantilly STEP program are listed below. Davis Career Center, South Lakes High School, and Mount Vernon High School. Those are the 4 STEP programs in FCPS. And then we have Work Awareness and Transition, or WAT, and we have Education for Employment, or EFE. Both WAT and Education for Employment teach work competencies, such as problem solving, work independence, understanding work ethics and policies, and developing good work interpersonal skills. And work safety is also covered. So WAT is offered to students with disabilities in some middle schools and is available to students in all high schools. Most students who are enrolled in WAT are participating in a modified standard curriculum or an adapted curriculum. Education for Employment, or EFE, also teaches the Virginia work readiness skills that are common in all the CTE courses. EFE is more classroom-based instruction and may not include the community-based component for unpaid work experiences. This is a course elective at some high schools, not all high schools, for students with disabilities who are participating in a standard non-modified curriculum. The Teachers for Tomorrow, I see in the chat there's a question about Teachers for Tomorrow. That is a career and technical education program. That is one of the programs that's at the academies, but it's not a step program. So a very important component of and a common thread throughout all of our CTS programs and course options is work-based learning. The students in high school WAT programs do experience community work experiences. Middle school WAT programs do not involve the community-based work experiences, but students may participate in jobs around the school environment. And this is often the first work experience that students encounter. So it does provide an important beginning for them to learn the needed skills for later work experiences, such as initiating and clarifying and following directions and building stamina and other important work-based competencies. So that is an overview of all of the different programs and courses and services that Career and Transition Services offers. We want to open it up now to our staff that is available to answer questions. We have representation from all of these different programs here tonight to answer some of your questions. You can use your raise hand feature if you'd like to ask a question, and we can turn your mic on. If you're not speaking, we ask that you mute your mics until you're called on to speak. And of course, you can continue to use the chat if that's more comfortable for you, and we'll address the questions in there as well.
So I'm just going to go ahead and speak. Just starting in order here. I see in the chat a family asked, or a person asked rather, I'm sorry, about a student transferring out of county. They still being Teachers for Tomorrow, and then you're asking about the other counties. I hate to pass the buck. I think that's a question for the other counties, though. About I wouldn't want to speak as to what they would accept and what they wouldn't.
I wonder if, yeah, I'm not sure about an answer for that either. Does anybody in the Academy support program know the answer to that? We can always find out.
Hi, it's Beth Talley from Chantilly Academy, special ed support teacher. We have taken students from other counties into cosmetology. Sometimes it depends on the number of students that we currently have at Chantilly Academy. That helps us decide whether we can take another student. So I think student enrollment at the in the other county is something to consider.
Thank you, Beth.
You're welcome.
I see a question about the career assessment and the lowest grade that career assessment will be conducted. It's all in high school. These formal career assessment options that I described here are all in high school. There are other career assessments like in the academic and career plan, Naviance, that can be done, and there's other more informal and interest surveys that are more geared towards middle school students that can certainly be done. But those formal aptitude and career related assessments are for the high school age. Generally, students are in 10th, 11th, and 12th grade when they do those. As they get a little bit closer to the transition age.
And I think Ms. Foster wanted to respond to a STEP question.
Sure. Yeah, let me just tell you a little bit about STEP. So our instructional focus of STEP is to work on, helping students develop both their hard and their soft work skills. So while we might teach them computer skills and filing and stocking or, washing dishes, things like that, we're also teaching them communication skills and flexibility, leadership, problem solving, things like that, time management, teamwork, how to have a positive attitude and have a positive work ethic. So we work on those things. We're working on helping our students enhance their independent living skills. So we might work on money skills and budgeting, cooking, cleaning, using public transportation. We work on self-advocacy skills, so helping our students, to better advocate for themselves, for their needs, ask for accommodations in the workplace, let their supervisors know what they need, and then we're working on helping them determine their career preference. So we work on helping them determine their strengths and their needs and what they might be interested in as a career choice. So our students go out to the work site 5 days a week. Typically, we're out there for about 4 to 5 hours per day. So they're at their internships. Our students interview for these positions, and then we also, we get to know the students, and we kind of we want to make it a good fit. So they'll interview for the positions, but then we also, we will talk to the employers and we'll talk to the students and we'll try to, make sure it's a good fit for the business and the job and for the student. And then we also take our students out, we do community-based instruction. We'll do tours of businesses. So we might take our students out to Wegmans, and we'll go, do a big job tour so they can see all the different jobs that are available at Wegmans or at Giant or different places like that. We'll do lots of community outings. So we might go out to, Reston Town Center. We'll take public transportation out there, and we might have the students do, a scavenger hunt or something like that. Where they have to locate different stores, like where they could find professional dress or where they could buy dress shoes or where they could get a haircut or, go eat, things like that. And then also we also do classroom-based instruction when we get back at the end of the day. So we'll, sorry, am I talking too long?
No, not at all. It's actually it's the sound quality of your microphone, I think.
Oh, really? Oh, I'm sorry.
No, that's not your fault. It's a technical issue. The content was fantastic. So thank you. I think it's probably better if we don't use your mic. I think for the rest of the session, but the content, obviously was fantastic. Thank you, Ms. Foster.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, thank you so much.
Erin, are you able to use your microphone? Did you have a
Hi,
question? And then
yes.
Michelle, I did put you in the queue there for a question.
Hi, yes, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, my parent is actually on the line with me. And one question first. She understands that some high schools provide a WAT course, WAT course. And when students take the WAT course, can they go to the job site and get the on-the-job training?
Yes. Do we have a WAT teacher that would like to answer that question?
Hi, I'm happy to answer that. This is Chelsea Swayze. I'm the WAT teacher at South Lakes High School.
Great, thank you.
Sure. So yes, part of most of the WAT programs in the high school setting is to have the students participate in the work-based learning internship out at a job site in the community. We do include school jobs and things like that as well, but along with our curriculum instruction. But yes, students participate typically twice a week, depending on block scheduling and what the week looks like. They participate in a job site either for one block or sometimes even a double block.
Thank you.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Sure.
And Michelle, I saw that you had your hand up, Ms. Pierce.
Yes, hi. I'm an elementary school teacher, and I was very interested in this because I have 3 sixth graders going on to middle school, and I wanted to be, educated more on how to talk about what curriculum is best for them. And I heard you mention the modified standard curriculum. And I was wondering if that's geared towards students that are kind of above the VAP, but yet still not quite high enough to pass the SOLs.
Yeah, our goal would be to have students participate in the standard curriculum and with some accommodations to help them access that curriculum, so to speak, and work towards passing the SOLs. Sometimes students do need modified curriculum, and once it's modified, then that standard diploma, there are some special permissions that a family and the school team needs to go through with the state to get special permission awarded credits. So generally, if the curriculum is modified at all, then the student is going to end up getting an applied studies diploma, most likely. If the curriculum and the content of the class is just, they're still getting that same content of the class, but they are there may be accommodations that are provided for the student so that they can reach that content and master that content, but maybe in a different way than some of the other students are, but they're still mastering the content, then they would get a credit with accommodations for that. So the modified curriculum, you're correct, is probably more along the lines of a applied studies diploma, but above, not necessarily adapted curriculum. It would be more along the lines of standard curriculum, but with modifications.
Okay, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
I know I'm not sure if this was answered or not, but someone had asked a question about providing further information on Nova Vision and asked about its relationship to NVCC.
Sure. I think Anna answered something about that in the chat. Anna, do you want to talk a little bit more about Nova Visions, or?
Yeah, sure. I did respond to that in the chat.
more information about this will be coming out shortly. We're actually kind of finishing all of those details up, as this is the first year. It will be offered virtually. But I think it's going to be an excellent event. And yes, it is in conjunction with Northern Virginia Community College. In fact, they're the main people running this event. Obviously, we're working with them to provide you all with what you need, but it's great to hear from their staff about the support services available at NOVA. So that's the number one goal for NOVA Vision.
And I believe there's a parent session. I don't know about the virtual, but so maybe there's not for the virtual. Usually there's if it's in person at this college, there's a student orientation kind of session and a separate parent kind of session too.
And that will still happen, yes.
Okay.
That'll still take place.
Right, right. I have a question, I guess, too, for Clem and Trevor, who have put a lot of this together. The handouts for families that they will get will include our CTS events flyer. Because I know that does have some more detail about some of these events, like Vision.
Yeah, hi, this is Trevor. Yeah, we can include that. For those who registered, and we have a list of all the participants, they'll get emailed a link to a Blackboard site that's going to have a lot of this information, and we can certainly put up our CTS flyer on there with our upcoming events. But we'll have our CTS contact sheet on there. We'll have flyers for our different programs and services. We'll have the YouTube recordings for each of these nights posted on there as well. And then we can certainly include the flyer, the CTS events flyer, yes.
Right. And like I mentioned earlier, remember that the ETR is a staff person to give you information and answer questions for you at your high school. We don't have ETRs at the middle school level, but ETRs are available to support the middle school teams if they have questions about transition planning, if they want training for their staff and case managers and whatnot for transition planning. And we do have a middle school liaison person in central office from CTS who is available for middle school support as well. And that's Maggie Contreras. If you were on earlier, you heard her presentation. And she is our central office person to the middle school. Maggie, if you want to add anything to that, I know you've done some things this year with the middle schools as far as training and IEP assistance. And
Yeah, absolutely. I serve as a resource for the middle schools, just as Ms. Ellis was saying. If case managers have questions or need assistance with transition planning, I'm happy to serve as a resource and provide trainings. So thank you for your question.
yes, Erin.
Yeah, my mic was mute. Okay, so another question from parents. Let's say the child wants to work in the Walmart or the Target kind of place, the commercial place. Is there any policy for the individual with the disabilities? Like, let's say they have a certain number of individuals with the disabilities they have to hire, or something like policies?
I'm not sure if they have actual policies of a certain number of people to hire, but Is there anyone in our staff ETR resource that would want to take a stab at that question? I mean, we do often help students
Janelle?
get, yeah.
Hi.
Hi.
I'm not sure if I'm going to exactly answer, according to what the parent is seeking, but if we keep American Disability Act in mind, no employer can discriminate against an individual based on his or her disability. However, regarding a certain quota for hiring an individual with a disability, I don't think that's stated anywhere. But if an individual is qualified with accommodations, considering the American Disability Act, and they can show that they're able to do the job with or without accommodations, then by all means, they have a right to apply. So I hope that's what the parent is wondering. But no, I don't think there's any policy that they have to hire a certain number, but they certainly can't discriminate against you because that's will violate the American Disability Act.
Okay,
Right.
got
Good.
it. Thank you.
Good,
Thank you
good
so
answer.
much.
Thank you,
Mhm.
and I think that's a good question too. I do think that there are some employers that really do have a good track record too with hiring people with disabilities too. So that is important to know. Erica?
Yes, I just wanted to make sure it's clear to people that the classes like WAT and Education for Employment for the Office that have a work experience, that those are not paid work experiences. Those are credit, you get credit for the class. I just want to make sure people are aware of that.
Yeah, thank you, Ms. Cohen, for bringing that up. Yeah, it's basically free training. It's employability training. It's training, on social skills, and all the employability training is, working as part of a team, following directions, um, dressing appropriately, how to interact with co-workers versus how to interact with a supervisor versus how to interact with a customer. All and so many as well as hard skills training as well, but it's a lot of employability training. As Ms. Cohen said, that is it's unpaid. It's free training that the school system provides to students as determined by their IEP.
Yes, and we sometimes refer to them as an internship too. But I will say it's important to know too that we do follow, and the employers, and we monitor it closely, the Fair Labor Standards Act. So we follow all of those rules. We do have very detailed work agreements for each student with each employer, that states everything very clearly about job duties and hours and supervision, and that it's unpaid, or sometimes there are some students who do have paid work experiences too, but generally it's unpaid. But there is a lot of, there's an agreement that goes with it, so it's very clearly spelled out. Saida, I see you have your hand up.
Yes, thank you. I just wanted to add something in regard to the unpaid internship. Although I recognize that it is unpaid internship, parents have to remember that it is work experience that is going to be very helpful in the future as the child can add it to their resume. It is a reference because when they look for a job, I've had a few students who got hired after that because they had references and they had work experience. So although it is unpaid internship, parents have to remember that this is great work experience, then an excellent source of reference for them once they look for a job.
Right, thank you, Saida.
You're welcome.
We have a job coach question there. Do we have a job coach expert in the panel?
Sure, I can answer that. So in order to get connected with a job coach, a student would need to go through their ETR. So if your student has a paid job, like you mentioned, and they're going to need some short-term support with getting used to the job site and just learning the tasks, then the ETR can submit a referral. And yes, they do work with students at the job sites through community work experience when we are in person in the buildings, but also paid employment as well. So I don't know if you have anything else to add, Sharon, and I hope that answered your question, Kimberly.
I don't have anything to add. We have job coaches who are just wanting so much to be out working with students. And so anytime a request comes in, they just are so quick to pick up the job because they miss the students. So they're not working virtually. We're working face to face, as long as our masks are on.
Yeah, and I'm sorry, I was just going to piggyback on what Margaret said that, yeah, I think particularly too, Watt is just speaking specifically to Watt. I mean, EFE and EFEO are obviously terrific programs, but for the programs like a STEP or Pulley Davis programs that spend the majority of their day out in the community, where the community is their classroom. Watt is great because students get all those pre-vocational skills. I worked at Pulley and Davis, both Pulley for a long time, and we certainly, the school system doesn't require a student participate in any of these classes prior, for consideration, but it was so helpful because the students came with more independence, with more responsibility, understanding what would be expected of them in the community because they had practiced those skills before. So it's if you are thinking, I mean, the goal of all of this obviously isn't, to get a high school diploma or to, get into a college or a trade. Goal for the rest, like all of us, it's to get a job, to be able to earn a living. And if not to earn a living, if that's not going to be possible, then at least to have the most independent life as possible, and fulfilling and meaningful life as possible. And that's going to involve work of some kind. So if you're thinking about that for your child, which I'm sure you are, and your child is more than likely going to be going directly into work after they get out of school, I think Watt is really a great class to consider to get those pre-vocational skills. And then as they get older, they're reaching that 18 to 22, then start looking at or speaking to the IEP team about the STEP or Pulley or Davis, one of our schools that offer a much longer workday, and to get the skills that Saida was talking about.
There's one question about, can 7th graders take the WAT course? I can answer that unless there's a WAT teacher here that would like to answer. Or Maggie? Or
Sure, yeah. We have had some 7th grade students enrolled in WAT. And it's actually kind of nice because then the 7th graders end up having a transition plan, which, as you know, having it earlier can really help. So, yeah, for some students, it is appropriate.
Thank you. Good question. Saida?
Yes, I just want to add that although what is offered at the middle school level, parents have to remember that their child will be doing jobs, in-school jobs, essentially. So their child will have to wait until they go to high school to eventually go to the work site and get the pre-vocational skills that Mr. Castellano was talking about.
We're happy to stay and answer any more questions. I do see that Trevor did put the link for our evaluation form for tonight in there. It's very important that we get feedback. It takes 4 minutes to fill it out. That's what it said when it was created, that it would take 4 minutes to fill out, so it's pretty quick. I did notice a question up above that I jumped in and answered, and probably I should have not answered it. I should have let the career assessment folks answer it since they're here. I know it was a question about how do you know which assessment is best? How do you know which career assessment to do? The VCEE, the Career Scope, Career Snapshot, or Woodson assessment. Does anybody from the Career Assessment Center want to take answer that?
It's Beth Morgan. I do Career Snapshot. Basically, I don't know as much about the assessment centers, but for Career Snapshot, you have to have like a 5th grade reading level to be able to do that, and it's held in a kind of group setting, whereas the assessments at the centers are more individualized and one-on-one, so to speak. So I hope that helped a little bit.
Yes, and I know there was a comment in there too. Thank you, Beth, about the ETR, and the ETR is well versed in it too. So if you have questions about which career assessment would be best, it's good to talk with your ETR about that as well.
And I'm not sure too if there's people in the room, but I know there were some DARS CSB questions. So just as a reminder, we're going to have, we had some terrific presenters obviously tonight, and we're going to have DARS and CSB are on Wednesday. But tomorrow we've got student self-advocacy, self-determination. Oh no, tomorrow is our collaborative partnerships. I'm sorry, with those adult services organizations, DARS and CSB. So for those of you who are interested in those, please come tomorrow. For those of you who have no idea what those are, even better, please come tomorrow. I think you'll be there's a great big world out there to support people, adults and young adults with disabilities, but they're different systems and they take some time to get to know. So I'm so pleased that so many of you are starting so early in your child's life, because by the time I think your child is ready to exit the school system, if you continue to stay this involved with their transition planning, you're going to be in a really good place. You really can never start this process too early, and starting when your children in elementary and middle school is terrific. So I just want to thank you all for that.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I second that.
And just another reminder, I think that here it is. Yeah, I'll put it in again. But Mr. Christensen, Trevor shared the evaluator form. So I know we're getting close to the end, but please make sure that you provide us some feedback. Look on that link and provide us feedback on how we can continue to make our sessions better and more meaningful to families. And thank you for the kind words.
Yes, thank you for joining us tonight. We're happy to be here and glad that you could come.